Hello, and welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning as we discuss more about patient acquisition. And my name is Nick Parwal. I head the business for the healthcare vertical for Lead Squared. I've been with them for a little over a year and a half. It's been a tremendous journey and a lot of great learning that has come knowing more about healthcare as an industry. A little bit, I'll take a minute to just give a quick background about myself and about Lead Squared. Having worked in the tech SaaS space for over the last decade or so, I currently am tasked with growing, learning, and taking our product and platform, which is Lead Squared, to the healthcare industry and clinics and practices that can leverage and add value to your organization through our platform. What Lead Squared essentially does is it's a front end system that helps clinics and practices automate and manage their engagement with patients on a day-to-day basis, and making sure that their patient engagement and acquisition is on point without having to leave out any of the patients who are reaching out for help. With me today, I have three brilliant minds and in marketing and operations, and I'll let them introduce themselves in just a bit. But before we get started, I also wanted to let our audience know that unfortunately, two of our panelists were not able to join us today because of certain unforeseen, emergencies that have come up. So I apologize for that last minute. But I'll turn over to John to introduce himself and then to Chinmay and to Dr. Asia, as well as Dr. Asia joins us in just a bit.
Great. Thanks, Nikhil. My name is John Keeler. I'm going to be moderating our conversation today. I'm the partner and chief strategy officer at Runner Agency. We're a marketing agency that focuses specifically inside of healthcare as a vertical. In terms of my background, I'm a veteran digital marketer. I've been working in the industry for about 20 years. Prior to joining Runner, I worked on a number of very large brands for marketing, brands like Walmart and MD Anderson, Chick-fil-A, Chrysler, Dr. Pepper over the years. And I'm also an adjunct professor of marketing in the MBA program at SMU in Dallas. So that's a little bit of info about me. Chinmay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chinmay Chauhan. I currently run a practice in Vegas. It's a wound care specialized medical practice. We have about 17 or 18 physicians. I say 17 or 18 because we're still hiring. We're expanding. My background is a decade of IT, a decade of ER, a decade of big pharma. The last ones you might even be familiar with, I used to work for the Humira people. I was a senior analyst, and after working so much corporate, I decided to come down and grow small businesses. So that's where we're at right now. But Vegas is a great market, and if you ever visit, you're more than welcome to come say hi.
Perfect. Quickly, before we get started, and I know we're still waiting on Dr. Asia to join us, and as soon as she's on, we'll take a pause to make sure that she can introduce herself as well. But to quickly set some ground rules, I want to make sure that we're going to be putting everyone on mute for the duration of the webinar, just to make sure there's no background noise or distractions. This means that you don't have to really police your pets or little ones if you're working from home. If you're having any issues with the volume, just click on the setting wheel to either change your audio device or adjust your volume. We encourage your participation and engagement, and we will have a few polls for you today. So please feel free to provide any additional commentary in the chat box as well. We're hoping to pique your interest and conjure some great ideas. We're going to make sure that we leave some time towards the end for Q&A at the end of the webinar. In the meanwhile, feel free to use the chat function again to ask your questions. We will get to them as many as we can, to be mindful of everybody's time as well. We'll also follow up after the webinar in case we are not able to take your questions. So don't worry, we will still make sure that our panelists answer those questions. On that note, let's get started, and I'll turn it over to John.
Great. Thanks, Nikhil. So thanks everybody for joining us today. We obviously have a lot of ground that we're going to cover. This is just kind of a high-level look at the agenda that we're going to talk through today. I'm going to be keeping us on time too to make sure we cover everything. So if we skip over something or we move forward and there's still something that you have a question about, again, feel free to just throw it into the chat so we can keep moving. I'm really excited today. I know that Asia is joining us right now, but I think one thing that's really interesting is we have two very different practices today to talk through that have very different kinds of marketing challenges. So I think what you'll find is this will address a pretty wide variety of challenges and opportunities in terms of patient acquisition. But I would love to just start off as we're getting started, the first couple minutes. If the people attending could just throw in the chat and let us know a little bit about who you are. Would love to get a little bit of a read on the audience in terms of, are you a solar practitioner? Are you a medical practice group? Are you a hospital system? Just to give us a little bit of a sense of who's here, and we can tailor a bit of the conversation towards you on that front. So as everyone's doing that, I want to really start off by thinking about the state of the practice. So Chinmay, maybe if you can start thinking about where your practice is today, what are your largest marketing challenges right now?
So I'll do a last 3-year event, right? So last 3 years, we've grown from a total of 1 physician, 2 mid-levels to 17 that we have right now. Our issues come up when patient acquisition is hospitals, nursing homes that we're already visiting, already credentialed in. But the follow-up, we see the patient once, and then the patient continuing with us is always, it's a gamble, it's a toss-up. Sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. The follow-up is the patient forgets to come to the clinic. The patient's unavailable. Something else happened. They ended up back in the ER, and next thing we know, that which has happened on more occasions than not, that they're in Utah, Arizona, or California. Of those, compared to 3 years ago, we were doing an average of maybe 500 patients a month. Right now, we're doing about 4,000 patients a month. But that challenge hasn't gone away. The challenge of getting the patient in and having them complete the treatment, we don't hold on to the patient. We're a specialty, right? Once we treat you, you go back to your primary, you go back to your cardio, go back to your surgeon, whoever it might be. But having the ability to complete a treatment is the biggest challenge, because we keep losing our patients to murky waters.
So Asia, thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Do you want to maybe give a short introduction, and then I'd love for you to tackle the same question. What do you feel like is your biggest marketing challenge right now?
Awesome. So I apologize, guys. I'm having some connectivity issues, so I've translated myself to my car. But my name is Dr. Asia Payne. I am a physical therapist. I've been a physical therapist for 6 years, practicing primarily in outpatient-based orthopedics. I'm currently the clinical director of my office in Wayne, Pennsylvania, where I oversee the day-to-day operations of my office, and also work on the management side in order to build my clinic population. So yes, one of the challenges, especially with getting new clients at this time, is that my company is actually new to the Pennsylvania area. So it's just getting people to even recognize our logo, to even know that we exist, that my office is even located here. So And it's also been very challenging to compete with the larger health systems here in Pennsylvania, such as Mainline Health, Penn, Temple. A lot of them tend to have their own physical therapy departments. So when you have a physician or a podiatrist, doctor, anyone who can write a prescription for therapy, they tend to give that script to the patient, and the patient just goes down the hall to the provider that's within the organization. So we have to find creative ways to target those patients without necessarily aggravating our referral sources, and not stepping on the toes of some of our bigger competitors that kind of beat us out with branding and marketing.
Great, that's awesome. So, I mean, this is, I think, kind of what I was talking about in the beginning, where I'm excited for the conversation today because these are very kind of different challenges. I know when we talked before meeting today, you both have very different, I think, strategies, both referral strategies and direct patient strategies. So I'm really excited to talk through those a bit. So for Asia, talk to me a little bit about, in terms of patient acquisition, what are the channels and strategies that you're relying on the most right now to reach new patients?
So most of my marketing is actually direct to consumer. So I do a lot of community events. We use the radio to target new clients. I use LinkedIn. I join different networking groups such as BNI to kind of bridge that connection with the consumer directly without necessarily having to market to doctors and say, hey, send me patients, I'll help them get better. It's a more of a grassroots approach to getting your name out there. But I find it to be more rewarding because a lot of people, they lose that face-to-face time with the doctor. And they're so used to someone at the front desk saying, all right, call this number, go see this person, and they'll take care of you. It really allows me a chance to build those long-lasting relationships with potential patients, current patients. And so that way I won't just have them for their episode of care. They'll keep coming back. You know, it may be an elbow, then they'll come back for their ankle. They'll tell their grandfather, their mother. It'll be a whole family affair before you know it. So it is definitely time consuming, but more fruitful and long lasting in the end.
So tell me a little bit more about, you know, just logistically and like from an execution perspective, what does a community event actually look like for you right now? What happens during it? Like, how do you get the word out about it?
So I'm very specific about the events that I do. So I tend to do a lot of races, health fairs. I'll use social media. And then we also run ads on a WMMR here in Pennsylvania. So we'll use that marketing tactic to let people know, hey, Trinity Rehab will be there. Stop by our table and we'll have some sort of giveaway, a free screen coupon, or they'll say the therapist is actually going to be there. People will come up to us and ask questions. Those events tend to be smaller. They're the smaller health fairs, but they're very fruitful. I'll get maybe 5 or 10 new patients just from going to a health fair because the people going there are interested in their health and they're coming with questions. They're shopping around and looking for new providers, or they have questions about insurances. So I'm able to reach patients that way, but I'm also able to network with some of the other providers that may be at the fair. So there may be a nutritionist table there. There may be a personal trainer there. There may be another physical therapy office there that's offering a service that I don't offer in my clinic. So I'm able to connect that way, and we really create almost like a cross referral relationship with some of those other providers there. And that is fruitful as well.
So if you wouldn't mind telling me, when we were prepping for the call today, you also talked to me about a brilliant strategy that you have that you called reverse referral. Can you talk to the attendees here a little bit about your reverse referral process?
Yes. So in the state of Pennsylvania, and for most states, physical therapists have direct access licensure, which means that a patient doesn't even need a prescription to come into the office and get started. So what I'll have is I'll have someone come in. They may say, oh, I hurt my toe. It's really bothering me. My wife is telling me I need to go see a therapist and get it moving. They'll come in off the street. I'll tell them you do need therapy. You need to go to your doctor and get a prescription. They get that script, and from that prescription, I'm talking to the doctor like, hello, I'm Dr. Payne. I'm here to help your patient. I'm right down the road. So you're essentially, instead of me targeting doctors and telling them to send me patients, I'm talking to the patient and then going backwards to get in contact with their referring provider. And doctors like that. They don't have a lot of time. So I'm not having 20-minute conversations with them about their patients, but I'm letting them know your person was injured. I thought about you first. I included you in their care. I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to follow up with you to make sure that they get better. And if you have anyone else who you feel could benefit from our services quickly, you can send them. We're open for new patients. It's very effective. And time-wise, reverse marketing works because how many of us have tried calling our doctor? You get sick and they tell you your doctor's their first availability is 3 weeks from now. So you imagine hurting your knee or, tearing your meniscus or getting a sprained ankle and waiting 3 weeks to go see your doctor. You'll either talk yourself out of getting therapy altogether, or you'll kind of just go crazy and suffer in silence and say, well, maybe I don't need to deal with this. So them coming to see me while they're going to get brunch within 24 hours of the incident, now I've gotten them to the point where they're getting treated, they're getting taken care of, all within 48 hours. So in that 2 weeks time, they're feeling better versus them waiting around for the next step. And that's the name of the game. Like if we're talking about getting new clients and sustaining them, well, the proof is in helping them get better or telling them, hey, you might not want to wait 2 weeks to go see your primary care physician. You might just want to go to the emergency room and get an x-ray because I'm pretty sure this is broken. I'm pretty sure this is going to cause you problems. And so it's all about that time aspect. It works very great, especially for new offices, new clinics. You have no client base, and the patients love it.
Awesome. So before I shift and talk to Chinmay about the same kind of question about marketing channels, why don't we go ahead and do our first poll? We really want to kind of get a read on attendees of which marketing channels you all have seen the most success with. So we're going to get this poll live. Everyone should see the poll come up. We've got a few different options in here. If there's something that is not in this list, feel free to add it into the chat as we keep the conversation going. All right.
Hey,
so
sorry,
yeah.
We had a question by someone about how would you target and try to reach Medicare only, not Medicare Advantage, with a reasonable CPL and good quality, with channels, etc. So I just wanted to, in the meanwhile, while everybody's answering the poll, I thought I'll get this question to you guys so you can answer that as well.
Sure. So I don't know, Chinmay or Asia, do you want to answer this? I have some thoughts as well.
I'll start. So Medicare Advantage is actually easier to target, but Medicare is the golden goose, right? Regardless if you have CPL payments or you're going for the full gamut, Medicare is the golden goose. I think this was Oja's question, you're a virtual practice, right? So your emphasis shouldn't be, these are the two different aspects, the way Dr. Payne does it versus I proceed with my practices. My recommendation would be to find the Medi clinics around you, be it the pain clinics, be it the PT clinics, the rehab clinics, the therapy clinics, and coordinate a connection with them because they have limitations, but they have the audience that you want. So instead of trying to find that one person that will benefit from the services you offer and is also Medicare only, go to a place that currently caters to Medicare only, and then offer your services there so that you can set up a referral source in that aspect, having them come in to you directly without you trying to micro down on which patient to target. Medi clinics in Vegas is a big thing. I say Medi as in Medicare, Medicaid. Um, there are strict Medicare clinics. I have a couple of facilities over here, a couple of private providers that only do Medicare in the house, right? So if you had a similar contact in which state you're in, my recommendation would be to actually get in touch with them instead of try and stand at the corner of the street and flag down your Medicare patient that would benefit from the services you're offering.
So really quickly, I'll just chime in. If one of the questions being asked related to that is, how do you use, let's say, how do you target that in paid advertising? I think my response to that question would be, there are a couple ways of approaching it. There are things that you can add into your targeting in the ads that you run that make it more likely that you would reach a particular insurance type that you're trying to go after. You should also include it in creative. If there are any restrictions or anything like that, you need to communicate that to people upfront so you don't waste any spend. But I think the last thing that I would say is it's important to have the data set up to feed back into the campaign. So as an example, I saw for a lot of the poll responses that Google search ads, right, is a primary channel that people are using. Well, if you set up your Google search ads properly, you can actually feed data back to Google and tell them, hey, this lead that I got with the kind of insurance that I really care about is a higher quality lead than this other lead. And it will help inform those advertising algorithms to get you to the right place. So really quickly, I want to keep us moving. So Chinmay, you have a lot of the normal kind of marketing channels that any practice would have in place. But you described to me this approach of having more of a sniper than a shotgun approach to what you do, and specifically to building referral relationships. So you talked to me about a medical director strategy you have where you kind of create this offer to start the relationship, and then you add services in. I would call this kind of a land and expand strategy, right, for referrals. Talk to me more specifically about your strategy here and how you've used it to grow.
So our audience has quite a few people that deal with mental health and telehealth. There's I see the major denomination is mental health and psych. One of the things that has worked is I have first, obviously, getting the right employees is a challenge. But once you have the right medical staff, the correct people for the correct position. So let me backtrack a little. All my staff, especially the providers, get at least a month of just training on this specialty. Once they're done, then one of the strategies that I use or was implemented earlier was getting to the SNFs, getting to the rehabs, and putting ourselves as a free service in the medical director position. So you have your CMOs, you have your regular medical directors, but for your injuries, for your wound, for your ID, we would provide that service for pennies on the dollar, right? It would be maybe $1,000 a year, $500 a quarter, if anything. But what that did was give those facilities a person that they could reach back to, that they could consult with. Once that was set up, then we had an open door to get into that facility and provide services in that facility. That was our marketing channel. Instead of strictly just, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook. I am an old soul. I'm really not a social media person. I do have TikTok, I'll admit to that. But just having those channels open doesn't convert your patient or your customer. Doesn't convert the person to a customer or a patient, right? We're in healthcare. Yes, we got into it to help people. I completely understand that. But the bottom line is, if you can't keep the lights on, you're not helping anybody. So in order to do that, one of the more boots on the ground strategy for me was going to a facility, offering free medical directorship, giving them the person that they can consult with, then offering service directly to those patients. While we're offering those service, the facility is not getting charged. We can work with the insurances. When we had enough patient volume, then we could negotiate with the insurances, work out a better understanding.
Really quickly, I didn't want to interrupt you, but one of the things you told me earlier was when you start off that relationship, like one of the things you're doing is learning, right? Like you're learning what the need is and where some of those priorities are, so you can then kind of add and build the relationship.
Right. So real life example for a life care center, geriatric population, mostly diabetic, and again, going back to the Medicare target, right? So these patients need help. The nursing home cannot provide it, but they did not know what metrics they had. Once I had a medical director in there, then I can see their metrics. Then I can actually go back with, hey, you have a 30% population that has an open skin injury of some kind. You can bill for it, and we will work with whatever you're billing for. We will make sure that we can provide the service. The main goal was to provide a service without financially burdening the patient or giving a budget hit to the facility. Once those relationships slowly grow, there's 3 life care centers. We started with 1, now we're on all 3. We started with 10 patients. Now I have about 60 patients a week from there, right? It becomes a volumes game. But there's no way you can get it unless you get those real life metrics. And the way to get those metrics, nobody's going to open their books for you. You have to go in and do some legwork. Yep.
Talk to us about your other strategy as well that you talked about. I guess this is more current, right? This your payer sort of approach.
Right. So first thing, we pride ourselves on giving the best service possible, right? At no point as any of my staff pointed at saying, well, you're providing mediocre care. Impossible. I'll bet my paycheck on it. Not going to happen. We have the best trained providers to provide the best care we can without hindering the patient financially. I mean, they're already in trouble. They're dealing with these ailments. Let's not give them other burdens to worry about. So we do that a lot. Once that is done, then we're focusing on the insurance mix, right? So my current one is Humana. We did so many patients with Humana, be it Advantage, be it regular, whatnot, and we gave them good results. The Medicare guideline is 12 to 18 weeks for a 5 square centimeter or small injury, right? We beat those targets. And then we took that information to the insurance. It wasn't easy. It was an 18-month battle, but we took that insurance information back to took that treatment information back to the insurance and told them, this is what we can do. We can avoid the patient going back to the ER. The patient actually has a heal out rate of this percentage. So why don't you make us a preferred vendor? And after 18 months, it happened. So channel marketing, yes. But the reason, I mean, I'll advocate for Lead Square. They're not paying me, but the reason I need them is because anybody can steer a ship. It's the good captain that gets you to navigate to your goal. Lead Square gives us that we have the patient volume, we get to see them once, and then we need that CRM support to make sure we can heal out that patient, which is currently out of my bandwidth, right? So I am okay paying for that to make sure that I can continue getting my doctors that treatment ratio that, yes, we're healing patients in this allocated timeline. And then in order for us to do that, we need a follow-up system, which there's a lot of CRMs out there, right? SaaS is there, it's a dime a dozen. But what Lead Square offers is that captain at the helm. We are getting that help, and I'm willing to pay for it because I'm paying for the captain. I'm not paying for the technology. That's what's lacking on my end. So boots on the ground channels, and then the CRM, how it integrates into retaining that patient, making sure I get that heal out, and I can keep that ratios up, right? Each of my provider, the lowest one is, I think, at 82% heal out, which is brilliant compared to the national average.
Okay. Really quickly, one quick question that we had from the group was, and I think this is for both you, Chinmay, as well as Asia, how long has it taken you to develop those relationships into meaningful referrals?
So I love this question because it's like dating. You know, if you're married, you didn't know after the, an hour of being with the person, hey, I'm going to marry you. It takes time. Sometimes it can take weeks. Sometimes it can take months. Sometimes it can take years. A lot of it depends on what you specifically want from the individual. So if you're talking to an orthopedic surgeon and your goal is, okay, you're learning about him, what surgeries he does. You learn, I'm thinking from a physical therapist. So he has someone that he refers for his shoulders. He has someone he refers for his hands, but he hasn't found the right knee person. This is after months of talking to him. Oh, every time I send someone to therapy for their knee gets stuck and I have to manipulate. Then you realize, well, I'm not going to tell him, send me all your patients. I'm going to start talking to him about, what do I do to treat knees? How do I prevent patients from needing to have follow-ups with him? How do I keep patients out of his office? When you really have to be specific and have a good plan and give it time and be patient with it. As far as growing these relationships. And again, like dating, you may start talking to a lead and realize, man, this is a waste of time. I'm not getting anything out of this. I don't like the person that I'm talking to. I don't like that, care provider or that nurse. I don't like who I'm communicating with. I don't want to have a relationship with them because I don't want to send them patients that they're going to say, why did you send me to this person? They're really mean and I don't like them. Or they'll send you clients and they aren't taking the time to get to know the type of clients that you need. So you're getting people that aren't suitable for PT. You don't take their insurance. They're not compliant with their programs, so they never get better, and they, they end up bad mouthing your clinic. You couldn't help me in one visit, even though that's not what you do. So I tell people you have to really put the time in, at least 6 months minimum.
Yeah.
Okay. 6 months minimum. And be able to recognize, is this going somewhere or is this not going somewhere?
Great. Well, I'm going to keep us moving. I did want to just address the time frame perspective because I think it's an interesting one. Just to give my perspective a little bit on the marketing channels that everyone put in the poll, because I think it's a very similar question. So SEO is a great example, right? 14% of people said that SEO has been one of the most successful channels with them. That is a long-term strategy, right? There was a study that was done by Ahrefs, which is one of the big SEO tools out there that a lot of people in the industry use. 95% of people, any pages that they create for SEO on their site are not ranking on the first page within the first 12 months. So that's a longer term strategy. You've got to be in it for the long haul to really see results there. And the opposite example, right, is something like Google search ads, where if you do your targeting right, like you can find that person right now who is looking to book an appointment, but you've got to have your targeting right. It also costs more, right? If you're going after that person who's ready right now. Well, I want to shift the conversation just a little bit, and certainly in the Q&A, we can talk a little bit more about marketing channels, but I want to kind of shift the conversation a little bit. So let's say you are someone who's spending $50,000 a month in Google ads, right? One of the things I think that a lot of the folks on this, a lot of the folks on the panel today have learned is the only way to make that investment turn into patients, into actual OVs booked, right, is how your leads are handled. So I want to start off just asking both Chinmay and Asia, what right now are some of the biggest challenges that you see with lead handling? What are those common issues that you have in getting people to go from patient to actually visiting? Chinmay, do you want to start off? I know you talked to me a little bit about no-shows as an example, being something that you struggle with sometimes.
Right. So the metrics on it is, if we're doing 100 patients a week, if we're seeing 100 patients, that is currently ratioed out at 30 patients that did not come in, forgot their appointment, just decided not to show up, had some other issue, but it can translate to either no call, no show, change in treatment. They got a call from their vascular surgeon saying, oh, your results came back, you're good, you don't need anything done. Well, you have a gaping wound on your leg, you need something done. But the patient doesn't get the full information and they decide to bow out of treatment. All that means is the next time I see them, they're going to be infected and now it's going to take longer to heal. That is one of our biggest challenges right now in establishing educated follow-up. It's not just a follow-up, not just sending them reminders, hey, show up to your appointment, make sure if you have anything, call us. Those, I feel like that's old technology. We need that tiered option. You're going to pick one for not being able to come in, then have the options on why are you not coming in, and have the ability to connect that phone to somebody in the office. It's like, hey, well, if you're saying you're healed, can we do a confirmatory? Can we do a telehealth? You don't have to come in. We'll send you a video chat, right? But can we confirm that the treatment that we started on can actually end? The problem comes back to, like I said, my approach is very business-like in a sense that if you treat your patients a little more on the metric end, let the doctor do what they're doing, let them do what they're doing well. But from the running the business side, if you treat your patients as metrics that need to be improved upon, that means heal out time improved upon, the fewer visits and the best results. If you can work on that, it works out better. In order for me to do that, I need communication that needs to happen with the patient and an actual medical provider. I don't care if it's an MA, but they can get a person to talk to.
Yeah, so Chinmay, you bring up a really interesting point that we talked about before, which is you have to have the data, right, to understand if there's a problem, right? So I think at least on the marketing side, it's the KPIs, like what is my no-show rate? How many times is my front office reaching out to people? How long is it taking, right? We did a research study at Runner recently where we were asking people about the time that it takes for them to make a decision about a provider, right? And for half of people, it's a handful of weeks, right? So if you're giving up after one call or 3 days or whatever, right, it just doesn't work. So one question I had for you, Chinmay, was I noticed that you have direct booking on your site. And I'm wondering if you could tell, I think there was a question that came up about this. Have you been able to see kind of a measurable impact on your practice by offering that?
So I'll be honest, we've had it for just about 18 months now. And my ratio, I'm a math guy, I'm an engineer, I'm an MBA, I have my little Six Sigma stuff, and everything has to be in numbers, right? My metrics for adding direct scheduling to our website translates to 2 leads a month, which for all intent and purpose, it's not a metric. It's just a roll of a dice. What has actually worked better is if we channel to, I don't know how to say this. Short version is no, the direct scheduling did not work for us. What worked better was actually just going to the hospitals and having lunches or presenting to the staff that, hey, when you have these patients, just let them know this is your option. That they have to find a wound care provider to continue treatment. Doesn't matter if they come to us or not. I'll leave that as a toss-up in a sense that If we mark it appropriately, if there's 10 patients, even if I get 2, that's okay. What's going to happen is, because our services is so great, regardless of the other 8 patients that did not come to us initially, when these 2 patients go back to their primary, their surgeons and whatnot, it generates an automatic channel of referral where, like Dr. Payne was explaining, right? It's like dating. Instead of me directly getting in touch with this person, I'm using their sister to be like, hey, can you hook me up, right? So my patients do that for me because we're providing good service. But the direct scheduling sadly didn't work for us.
So really quickly, just as a note, because I think I saw a number of responses in the chat from people that are with telehealth providers. Right. So I will just say anecdotally from my experience, just as an example, I worked with a telehealth provider that they could 100% book OVs with telehealth providers through text messaging only, right? So one thing I'm a big advocate of is people communicating with patients via the means that they want to communicate. And we're seeing more and more of that kind of activity through text messaging. And you've got to be really good on the phone if you want to convert people. The story I always tell everybody is there was a guy who got lost in Grand Teton National Park earlier this year, and the police were calling him and he was declining the calls because it was from an unknown number. So the bar has just been raised in terms of how often you have to call people back. And so I think that for any of our telehealth folks, text messaging has worked really well. We've seen it work for traditional practices too.
I do have to correct something. I mean, because of the specialty, I have to have the patient touched by a provider. We can't do it over the phone. So because the market I'm working is niche, I know telehealth will work and is great. And that's why I want the CRM side of it. I need that expertise, which I don't have.
Yep. So really quickly, can we do our next poll? So one of the questions that we had related to that data and having that data on all these potential patients is getting a sense of how many people here actually have a CRM system that you're using to get that insight into how leads are being handled. So while everyone's answering this, Asia, did you have anything that you wanted to add into the lead handling conversation?
Absolutely. A lot of it has to do with timing. So I found between 24 to 48 hours response is the sweet spot, because when people are looking, they're really looking, and they're either going to talk themselves out of needing services, or they're going to go to the provider that responds to them the fastest. So things like, we use emails. We use a lot of email to communicate with patients. Some patients will put on there that they prefer to communicate with text, so we text them. When you ask that question, it's, if I called you right now because you said phone, will you make an appointment? And then you follow up with them, and we don't have I would have to say maybe my no-show cancellation rate is like 8%. I very rarely have patients cancel, and it's usually because of an emergency or they were exposed to COVID, because we're 100% in person. But it's all about the speed. Like if you and don't follow up with them fast enough, they'll go someplace else. And then even if they decide to go to another provider, I still follow up with them 2-3 weeks after, because after that time, you figure you're either getting better or you're not getting better, or you're not happy with where you went. And you're like, well, we're taking patients. If you want to transfer your care to us, or we're just checking on you to see how you're doing. And if you're happy, or they may be better and they may have another injury, they know that you still exist and you're accepting patients. Now, for some practices that are busier, that can be a challenge because patients slip through the cracks. And the more patients you have, the more people slip through the cracks. But if you're, someone who's 100% telehealth, I'm a proud proponent of anything technology, because it just makes it easier to communicate.
Great. Yeah, I often tell clients that, changing your lead handling can have a huge impact on the success of your marketing, right? So if you can double, your conversion rate of how many people you can get from a lead to an actual OV, you can get a lot more out of that investment that you're making in advertising or whatever it is. Okay, well, I know we're getting pretty close to Q&A, but the last thing I think that we wanted to talk a little bit about was patient engagement and retention. I know we've touched on it a little bit, I think, in some of this lead handling, and you certainly talked about timing, Asia. Is there anything that you feel like you're doing differently now to retain patients, or things that you want to do to better sort of retain those relationships over the long time?
I feel for me, it's more about the communication aspect and accessibility. And so my patients come and see me because they know they have access to the therapist at all times. If they call and leave a message, I'm going to be the one to call them back. I know long term, once I start getting into those huge numbers, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to do that. I think one of the biggest things for retention is just making sure that people know the quality of care. So for over the last quarter, my biggest thing has been write a Google review, write a review, write a review, because patients can tell you how much they love what you did and how great that they feel, and then they'll tell their friends, but we're all Google people. You get on Google, you look at a restaurant, the first thing you're doing is looking at the pictures and you're looking at the reviews online. So that's been a really big push for me to get people to write Google reviews and write specific Google reviews. And like if you're a telehealth provider and you use hypnosis, or you use mindfulness, or you use a very specific technique to treat your patients, you have to get the patient to write a review and say what the technique is. So that way, when someone starts to Google that specific technique, your information is going to come up because you do that. Like we have an anti-gravity treadmill. I tell patients, you use it, write that you like the anti-gravity treadmill. So when someone's looking, who has a treadmill that gives them anti-gravity capabilities? Does it work? Do patients like it? Is it safe? That's what you really want, specific reviews.
Gotcha. So if everyone wants to go ahead and throw any questions that you have inside of the chat, we're getting ready to kind of start the Q&A session. I think I will start off with one of the questions that was asked. This one was specifically about using Zendesk to respond to people in real time on their website or leads. I think this is sort of a question around chat. Chinmay or Asia, do either of you have experience with chat and those sorts of leads?
So personally, Zendesk, I have not used it. They did do a demo for us. I completely agree with Asia. The follow-up with the patient is the key. Our communication is lacking, and my hope is that adding a CRM takes that task away from us. One of the biggest problems we have is my staff. We did the Google reviews for a while, right? The problem is for a while. The certain staff will ask for it consistently, and then after 2 weeks, people forget asking. One of the new things we've started implementing is, when the patient is healed out, they have the little bell, they do the little sticker thing, they send a greeting card a week later saying you've healed out. What I would like to add to it is, hey, that greeting card has maybe a QR code or has instructions on how to leave a Google review. But the Google review is very important. Any review is very important. Personally, I don't have the skill set, so I'm going to hire people to do it for us. My staff is not consistent enough, so I need somebody to do it for us. But Zendesk, like I said, I saw their presentation. Between them and my rationale for choosing a different vendor was I didn't like their leadership. Yeah, that's all I can comment on.
So my recommendation, at least on the reviews side of things, is you have to set up an automated system to ask for reviews.
Right.
And I think for consistency's sake, the timing is absolutely important. I know Asia talked about that before, but if you're a spine surgeon, you don't want to ask someone like right after they get discharged, right? You want to wait a little while, but you can automate all of that. The most important thing, and when you see a provider that has like nothing but 5-star reviews, I guarantee you they're using technology to only ask people that have a good impression for a review. So you can do that with technology where you're screening before you ask for the review. So you're essentially asking them, how likely are you to recommend us? And the only people that you're inviting to write a review proactively are the people that have already said, like, yes, I'm really likely to recommend you to someone else. I'll just touch base on the chat piece as well. I think chat's a pretty interesting one. I've seen it used across a lot of different practice types. The volume, I think, is never overwhelming, but for certain kinds of providers, I think it makes a lot of sense. The biggest thing is you have to make sure that it's HIPAA compliant, because you don't want to be chatting with people who are sharing all kinds of PHI like through the chat. But for certain categories, I saw a couple people that mentioned addiction treatment, like people can have a great anonymous chat with you on your site, and it can work really well, I think, to have some conversations with patients in that way. What other questions? I see a note here, Google review or Trustpilot, which do you think is better? Maybe Chinmay or Asia, do you have any experience with, we talked about how important Google is, right?
Right.
Any other kind of review platforms that you've found that are important to have some visibility on?
Any platform where the person reads it is a good platform. Like you said, a lot of people use Yelp. I am not a fan of Yelp because people only write Yelp reviews when they have bad experiences. You rarely see good experiences on Yelp. But there's no platform that is a bad platform. You just want to have your name out there and you want it to be attached to positive responses.
So my patients usually understand Google. Yelp has never, even if they have a good comment, it gets pushed down because it's a paid algorithm where if you don't pay, if I don't pay as a company to Yelp, they will leave the good comments on the bottom. And I don't know what happens over there. But what I was able to figure is when they put down a good Google review, there is a way to pull it to your website and then have it on a carousel, right? So every time you get new reviews, it pops up on your website, and that helps with your SEOs because now you have an additional clickable event that brings you back to your website. But again, IT is out of my wheelhouse, so I'm hoping Nick's team is going to make it all better for us.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is I think depending on what specialty you're in, there may be a specific, review site that's important for that specialty where people might research a physician, so, I mean, just off the top of my head, I know there are things like there are review sites that are specific to aesthetics as an example, or for addiction treatment, right? I think Psychology Today and some other places have specific kinds of review sites. So I think I'm with Asia, like no review, a good review is a great review no matter where it is. And I think people also underestimate that, you get good links back when you have reviews on a lot of different places. Those links back to your site are important as well. I know we've got time for a few more questions. So, sorry, was someone else?
Comment on the reviews, asking for reviews. So the best I have found is I do not ask my providers to do it. I don't ask the doctors to do it. It's usually the front desk when they get their heel out. That's when, or they're on their second to last visit where the confirmatory would be the next week. That's when the front desk will, to the point where we'll have, if they agree to it, my front desk person will sit with the patient, open up the Google review, and help the patient type in whatever they need to. Rare, but that has effectively worked. But never the doctor asking for a review. It has to be a support member. You don't want to put your doctor in that position. Vegas is the hot spot for legal activity. You don't want your doctor in that position. So please only use your support staff. That's my best answer for it.
Cool. So I think one of the last questions that I had for both you, Chinmay and Asia, is which kind of marketing channels are you the most excited about? Is there anything new that you're excited about using or trying out?
I am thoroughly excited about the use of social media and just virtual treatment as an option to get new patients, because it creates accessibility. It increases awareness for not only your services, but people's health in general. I've never seen so many people interested in what physical therapy can do for them out, prior to injury or post-injury, as I've seen now. And it's also targeting so many generations of people. I mean, and we have a lot of people that have like virtual businesses, but you're able to work with someone in another state or across your state that you may have never been able to have because of these online platforms that exist now. And it creates so much accessibility. So I'm interested in seeing how insurance companies are going to respond to that long term over the next few years, and what that would mean for practitioners, going forward.
Just adding on to it, yes, the next wave is telehealth and home visits. Nobody wants to, I think it's a COVID result, but I have more patients that want to be seen in the home, even when they can walk and drive to a physician's office or have that option. The next one I'm hoping for is geo-targeting, where instead of going across the state, I want to go what's at arm's length. I want to target the surgical suite that's 5 miles from me. And anytime the patient's there and everybody is browsing on their phone, I want them to see a commercial pop up for us. Because they're at an orthopedic surgeon, they're at a surgeon's office, something's going to get cut. Once it's cut, it needs to be healed. Hey, guess what? We do that best. So that is the next target for me, is getting very exact, geographically targeted Google ads, social media advertisement to get those patients, because we know they're going to need it. So, and then the options increase. Come to the clinic, we'll come to your house, we'll see you at the hospital. We cover 30 of the 38 hospitals in Vegas. One of my people will come see you.
Awesome. Well, I know we're here at the top of the hour. Nikhil, do you want me to hand it off back to you?
Yeah, I want to thank you so much, John, for moderating the session. And I want to thank Dr. Asia and Chinmay for taking the time and joining us today. I think this was very, very insightful. And I think most of our audience members are going to go back with a lot of food for thought to see and, learn from some of the conversation today. Lastly, I want to leave everybody with a thought. We at Lead Square are doing a lot of interesting things around marketing and patient acquisition. Feel free to reach out to us and schedule some time, and we'll be happy to walk you through our platform. And some of the questions that we've not been able to answer, we'll make sure that we get back to you one-on-one after the session and make sure our panelists can share more answers over there. Finally, thank you so much once again. Have a great rest of the day, everybody, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.